Hello everyone. We are having a daily broadcast on the Two Cats, and today we are talking. We continue talking about how important local votes is, local elections, because we are all delegated our votes to people who is gonna be created the environment and the neighborhoods we are living for. It's even more important than presidential elections, and we have a special guest today, Vito LaBella, who is running for District 43. How, Vito? How are you today?
Hello, good morning. Thank you for doing this.
Yes, of course, it's very important to talk about the situation and for the people who's running for the local election. You're running for District 43. Please describe what is the district includes or county includes and what the people live in District 43.
So, District 43 takes in the neighborhoods of Gravesend, Bensonhurst, a little bit of Bath Beach, a little bit of Sunset Park, a little bit of Borough Park. It was meandered together when they did redistricting last year. And you can't talk about District 43 without mentioning the really inappropriate way South Brooklyn was gerrymandered. I don't call it a gerrymander, I call it a Brannon Aviles manner. A Brannon Aviles manner, because what they did was they took South Brooklyn and they cut it up like a pie. And Diker Heights, a very conservative leaning area, moderate conservative leaning area, that was kind of like the center point. They took a chunk of South Brooklyn, the Army base, the Diker Heights Golf Course, Bath Beach, and they gave it to Staten Island. And they did that because, heck, you know what? You can't hurt anything in Staten Island. David Carr's the councilman there. He doesn't have an opponent. They're going to have great representation, but they took those votes out of the mix for any part of Brooklyn. And that wasn't by accident. That was intentional. Then I'm sure you heard, there's a 1 block connector between District 47, Bay Ridge, which has traditionally been 47, that's Brannon, and a 1 block connector to Coney Island. And that is Ari Kagan. And so Ari Kagan, as you know, he was a Democrat. He saw this. They threw him under the bus because Brannon didn't want to go against Aviles because they're simpatico. She's a DSA, horrible, Democrat Socialist of America, horrible for us. And Ari Kagan says, "Oh, I'm not going to tolerate this. I'm going to switch sides." And good for him. We need more people to switch sides. Come on over if you're a moderate Dem, if you're an independent. Come on over. We want to have you. And they took, I said, Aviles. So District 38 is solid Diker Heights, where all the Christmas lights are and the beautiful big houses, big lawns. That part of Diker Heights they gave to Alexa Aviles, Sunset Park, Red Hook, part of Park Slope, and that was to dilute the more conservative voices of Diker Heights, right? So it doesn't have a voice, and they use this excuse of Asian representation. We have to represent Asians. And that's how they created my district, District 43, which is all those neighborhoods I mentioned earlier. But what I tell people is we could have kept neighborhoods whole together. We could have kept Sunset Park and Bay Ridge together, but Alexa would have to fight with Brannon. They didn't want to do that, but we could have had Diker Heights, Bensonhurst, Bath Beach, and that would have been a pretty high percentage of Asian families, but the neighborhoods would have been kept together. So, District 43 is a diverse neighborhood. As you mentioned, we have 56% Asian, but we have 10% Italian. We have 15% Hispanic. We have a lot of Russians in the Bay Parkway area, Russian Jews. And when I speak to them, they keep on saying Asian, Asian, Asian. Well, what about me? And they have a right to say that because both of my opponents are emphasizing the fact that they should vote for them. They should vote for them because they're Asian. But to me, I mean, it sounds like well, I'm only going to care about the Asian community, and that's not right. I mean, I've fought side by side. I went to war side by side with the Asian community in defense of schools, in defense of violence against the Asian community, and not just because of this election. Going back years, going back to 2018. So I will work. Of course, I have worked. I have a history of working with the Asian community, but I'll also work with the Russian community, the Italian community, the Hispanic community, and all of the other communities. I don't care if you're one person from one diverse community that no one's ever heard of. I'll make sure that your concerns are addressed and I hear your voice as well.
And you're right when you're talking about like a multicultural, because we are all American, first of all.
Yes.
Yes. And the second of all, we are Asian, Russian, Jewish, and some of the nationality. So you mentioned Eric Kagan. He was Democrats before. Remind me, now he is Republicans. What's going on? What's happened?
They got rid of his district. They made a calculated plan to they didn't want, Justin Brannan didn't want to go against Alexa Aviles, so they had to put it together somehow. Justin Brannan didn't want to put Bay Ridge with Diker Heights and Bensonhurst and Bath Beach, because God forbid he did that, he would get his butt kicked. So he did this horrible thing. If you see the line, the 1 block connector between Bay Ridge and Coney Island, and if you see this 1 block connector down south, if the Republicans did that to disenfranchise the African-American community, there would be howls of outrage. But because Democrats do it up here in New York, everyone's quiet. Oh, yes, no, it's not like that. Oh, no, you're wrong. No, we're not wrong. We see what it is. We see what it is, and we know what it is. They're trying to disenfranchise South Brooklyn.
What we need to change in District 43? What is your plan?
So listen, I always try to manage expectations. There are 51 city council seats. 26 of those seats are 26 of those seats are fielded by Democrat Socialists of America, DSA. So, you know, they have a super majority. And the best case scenario, right now we have 8 Common Sense Caucus members. And these are Democrats, a couple of Democrats and Republicans who are forming a coalition, basically in polar opposite of the DSA. Best case scenario, we grow the Common Sense Caucus to 11. So now we're 40 to 11. So what we can do is we can scream a lot. But now we scream. I mean, I've been screaming for 6 years. There's a difference when community activist Vito LaBella screams and when city councilman Vito LaBella screams, and you have 10 other people behind you. It's shining a light on their crazy policies, what they do, what they've done, and more importantly, what they want to do. Because they want to go forward with a bunch of crazy policies. And then we need to get some kind of a block as large as possible to try to stop them. And, you know, we could talk about policing, we could talk about quality of life, we could talk about schools, we could talk about the migrant issue, all of these policies that they've put in place. I'm talking about the far left city council. We need to pull those policies back to try to come back to the middle. We don't want to go crazy. We just want to come back a little bit toward the center.
Tell me, you've been city commissioners, I believe, twice, right?
Community Education Council.
Council, okay. So how are you going to use that experience in your new position if you're elected in District 43?
So on the Community Education Council, it's a parent elected body. They deal specifically with school issues. So what I tell people is, on paper, both my opponents are saying very similar things to me. Okay, so fine. So we all have similar policy positions. I have the experience, I have the knowledge, and I have institutional knowledge because I was a cop, as you know, for 32 years. So I know, you know, when we go to a precinct meeting and the CO says this and that, I can ask questions that drill down specifically on what that person is saying. Same thing when you go to One Police Plaza and you talk to the legislative director there, you know, they can't do the song and dance that they usually do. And I would say the same thing about the Department of Education, which is now called New York City Public Schools. That's the rebranding. When I go to a meeting with the legislative director, when I put forth a policy and they say, no, we can't do this because of that, I say, no, that's not true. When they talk about funding, I could bore you to death with all of the minutia about the New York City Public Schools, right? Department of Education, all about the fair student funding, where the money comes from, how it's designated, how you stack money on things. I mean, it really is. When you talk about budgets in schools, as a member of the school leadership team, we've learned to do that. And my eyes, I'm like sitting there in the room and they're talking about all these different categories. And, you know, they use acronyms, and that's what bureaucracies do. Bureaucracies use, you know, tech speak to try to limit discussion. Okay. And that's a trick. That's an old trick. So, you know, what I do when they do that, when I first started, because you know what, I know what the trick is, and I'm not going to be snowed. So when they say FSL, excuse me, what's FSL? Well, FSL is fair student funding. Oh, really? Can you explain what fair student funding is? And then you make them do it. And every time they mention a new acronym, you say, raise your hand, excuse me, can you please tell me what that is, and explain it more in-depthly? And then so they know what the deal is, and they stop doing it. And that's when you can have a conversation. And I did that as a brand new SLT member in a school. And so I'll stand up to the Department of Education, New York City Public Schools, whatever they want to call themselves, when they try to do their little dog and pony show and tap dance for the city council.
Going back for one plaza, it's a police head department, right?
Yeah.
So you serve for police department, I believe 32 years, right?
Yes, sir.
So because of the Democrats and Socialists, which is the major in New York criminal situation, is raising up now. And Brooklyn and Bay Ridge, and also there is a lot of area who is afraid to go even outside because of the criminal situation. People are afraid to go and use the subway. A lot of immigrants in New York now, and Staten Island also. You mentioned the one part of your district belongs to the Staten Island too. And all this situation waiting for the people who know, like a familiar with the police department, familiar how police works, to change it, to change this horrible situation created by Democrats, and waiting for someone like you comes to that position and do something. What is your plan in this way?
So what I would like to see, and first of all, let me say my district is wholly in Brooklyn. So District 50 is a part of South Brooklyn that they gave to Staten Island. You mentioned that. I just want to clear that up. Look, so going back to 2016, when de Blasio first came into office, or first was reelected, he started to dismantle all the successful tools that we used to use to address quality of life policing. So they decriminalized a lot of minor violations that when you enforce them, when you give people summonses, when you address these, you send the message that we expect a certain type of behavior, a little modicum of good behavior from the people walking down the street. Okay, we have 8 million people plus living in New York City. You know, we can live together when everybody follows the rules and everyone behaves themselves. And this is how we could live in such a compact city. What the city council did is they decriminalized open alcohol, urination, defecation. You can't give a summons for smoking in the park. I mean, the marijuana situation is insane. When they made marijuana legal, they said that you can smoke marijuana any place that cigarettes are allowed. But they also said the police can't enforce it. So what the heck is that? So, I mean, look, and that's a state thing. The city council might be able to pass a local law allowing the cops to address marijuana. You shouldn't have people walking down the street smoking a joint or drinking a beer. I mean, you have kids. I'm on the school leadership team at Brooklyn Tech. All three of my kids went through there. My daughter's there now. And you have kids smoking a joint, walking to school in the morning, hanging out at a little park, smoking a joint, getting high before they go to school. And there's an attitude, which I can't understand, by some teachers and not administrators so much, but there's an attitude that, oh, they're just self-medicating. They're just self-medicating. Well, that's a problem. Because if I'm drinking, you know, a shot of vodka in the morning to start my day, I'm self-medicating. Maybe I have an alcohol problem. And if this kid is smoking a joint before he goes to school, maybe that kid's got a problem. Instead of helping that kid, what a lot of the narrative is, oh, well, we'll just leave him alone. We don't want to upset him anymore. That's insane. That's insane. We got to penalize marijuana use in the streets. We got to allow police officers to to police these unlicensed illegal weed shops. It's so funny. Someone's saying, if you go to a bodega and you ask, you're an 18-year-old kid, and you ask for a beer, they're going to card you. They're going to make sure if you're under 21, you don't get served. The same thing with cigarettes. They're deathly afraid of serving an underage kid with beer, with alcohol, or with cigarettes. But a lot of these same bodegas, you go and you give them a wink and a nod, and they'll give you a dime bag of weed. They're not afraid because there are no consequences, right? They'll lose their beer and cigarette license, and they'll lose a lot of money, but there's no consequences for selling some kid a bag of weed. So they do it. They make extra money. And that's the insanity that has to stop.
Usually go out from some subway station. I see a lot of the people who's using drug on the street.
No.
And I mean, like injection, not like a marijuana, but injections. And the police just standing and watching and doing nothing, unfortunately, because, and I have my personal explanation, that's because of the democratic who not allowed to police officer do anything with them. And also that police of the, it also happens because of the prosecutors, the leftist, like Trump says, lunatic prosecutors, who allowed to do this for destroy our society. What is your opinion about?
Well, I mean, yeah, you got it right. So there's something called safe injection sites, right? They want to have heroin injection sites in every neighborhood of the city. That's their answer to this. So that is just so wrong. I always go back to my experience with the police department. Unfortunately, we have a lot of cops that are alcoholic. Not a lot, but we have, a fair number, and we have programs in place to treat their addiction. In conjunction with that, there's an organization called Al-Anon, which is alcoholics. It's for families of alcoholics or people with addiction. And it used to be said, part of the narrative was, well, you don't enable the addict. You hold them responsible for their behavior. And that's part of the treatment. You got to give them a little tough love. But the crazy progressives, they don't believe in tough love for these heroin addicted individuals. They think that you just give them a safe place to inject themselves, you let them alone, and when they're ready for help, they'll come to help. That's garbage. That is ridiculous. That is just insanity. That will not work. We need to be, if they're committing a crime and possessing heroin is a crime, criminal possession of controlled substance, 7th degree, I believe, that's a crime. They should be arrested for that. And then we don't want to put them in jail, but there should be a drug there used to be a drug courts. They need to go to a drug treatment. And if they don't, after a certain amount of time, if you don't go to a drug treatment program, you know what? Maybe you need to sit in jail for a year for the next time you commit a crime. Who was Iron Man? Robert Downey Jr. He was one of the few Hollywood celebrities who had an addiction problem and who is, as far as everybody knows, has been clean and sober for a very long time. And you know why? Because he spent a time in jail. He was a superstar at the height of his career, and he's sitting in jail. And I don't know if he's ever said this publicly, but what I say is, you know what? When you're a multimillionaire, used to being a pampered Hollywood celebrity, and now you're sitting in a cell, maybe that's a way to really evaluate your life. And we need that kind of tough love. And it's about putting money where things work. And whatever we want to do to help people, we have to evaluate it like it was a drug, like it was any other drug treatment program, like is there any other therapy where you have a controlled substance where you do nothing and you have a program and you see which works and find what works and use data-driven knowledge, find what works, and you keep doing more of it.
When I talking to the New Yorkers, the most of the New Yorkers telling that the situation is everywhere in the city, but not really. Some areas have like a bad neighborhood, some area have a good neighborhood. What is depends from and why people still voting for the Democrats?
So this year, I am a registered Republican. I'm running on the conservative line against two other opponents. So I'm on, it's only one race, really. They have a bunch of civil court judges, And then they have on the bottom of the ballot, there's city council for District 43. I'm in the third column. It's on the bottom on the right-hand side. So look, I don't know why people keep voting for Democrats. There's a big block. They have a lot of power. They have a machine that comes to play, and that keeps the machine going. They feed the machine. The machine is made up of nonprofit organizations. The machine is made up of all of their clubs. You know, when you're a nonprofit, I thought that a nonprofit, I was so stupid, and I admit that sometimes. My experience with a nonprofit is, you know, I made my PTA a nonprofit, parent-teacher organization, so that we could get some tax exemption, we could get donations, we get matching donations, and I did that. I didn't take a salary. No one took a salary. Everyone worked for free. My experience as an actor, as a producer, you start a nonprofit theater company, everybody works for free. You know, you're just getting this a nonprofit status so you could request donations and give people tax breaks because they take it off their taxes. But I never realized that being a nonprofit in New York City is a very, very lucrative business. You have all sorts of nonprofit organizations with addiction, with homeless, with migrants, with senior centers, with daycare centers. You're this nonprofit organization, and you know everybody there, the top echelon anyway, is making boco bucks, right? You're making 250, 300, 400 grand. You're driving around in leased cars because you know the city is paying for you to run it. The city is paying you to do the city's job, whatever that is. And these nonprofits have a vested interest in keeping everybody in power the way they are, because God forbid someone comes in, and it might be someone like me, and says, listen, you're doing a great job, we're not going to begrudge you making 11, but how much of your budget is going toward the mission, and how much toward administrative expenses? And a nonprofit organization like Tunnels to Towers, like 90, some really high amount, 99% or 98% of all of their money goes toward their mission. And we need to be, at the very least, every single nonprofit needs to have exactly how much they pay for administrative expenses clearly listed, maybe on the front door, like a calorie menu, but definitely on a website and definitely in a searchable database. And then we have to decide as the city council, as an organization, you know, what threshold should be required for someone to do business with the city. And I think it should be relatively high.
So I want to ask you about some racial discrimination. I heard a couple years ago was situation in a school with the children's, Asian children's, and you were involved to protect that children's. Tell us about little bit more about the situation.
So it was 2018, and you know, it's not, and I always want to say this, you know, I was the PTO president at Krista McAuliffe Middle School in the middle of District 43, and we was sending 275 out of 300 kids to the specialized high schools. Specialized schools like Brooklyn Tech, Stuyvesant, Bronx Science, Staten Island Tech, and the others. What de Blasio said, we were 67% Asian at the time. And most of those high schools and most of the screen programs were Asian, white. Far too few Black and Hispanic kids. That's a problem that's a lot bigger than just one test. These schools are populated by the Scholastic, the specialized high school aptitude test. These schools are populated by that exam, and the de Blasio's policy would have changed that and populated some other way, but take the top 10% of kids from all the middle schools, and that would have reduced the number of kids from my school from 275 down to something like 30. And then the parents came to me, mostly Asian parents, and they said, what could we do? Well, so this is what started on my road to running for Senate last year and running for city council this year, and also for being a community activist. We just started down a path, and the path was protesting. The path was testifying before the assembly, the state senate, the city council. It was, you know, we founded an organization, co-founded an organization called Place New York City, which was a portal, a way to get all of these parents together who believe in this and put pressure on the city and on the Department of Education. We did all of this, and this started over 2018, and it led to me to run for city council, not city council, community education council, and get our voice heard there, because there was this, they were pushing the progressive narrative. And we have a lot of Russian kids in Brooklyn Tech, and 187. There's a cohort of that, because, and you know who it is? It's people who come to this country and they understand, especially immigrants from socialist countries, communist countries. They get it. So the Chinese don't want this. The Russians don't want this. They left this. The Democrats, Socialists of America, all of the policies they put forth, these Marxist policies. My Russian friends, my Chinese friends, they say, we know what this is about. The people come from Venezuela or Cuba, they know what this is about. This is just a false promise. This is smoke and mirrors. It's a promise that never could come true. It only enriches the elite, and though they promise to help the ordinary person, they don't. All they do is dumb down our schools, make our streets less safe, and nothing works about the DSA policies.
So I want to ask you also about like a tough questions. Now that the situation with the hate for the Israel's students, and the situation between Hamas terrorist supporters who's on the street in New York, everywhere, and the university, it makes the whole situation like unsafe for the all New York residents, because we have like a multinational population in New York, and everybody, if started talking about the country problems and get in on a New York street, is going to be disaster. And so in New York especially, the pro-Hamas terrorist supporters everywhere on the street, and the tough situation in a campus on the university. Last week in Cornell University, started threatening and to mass shooting to Jewish students, and some situation, harsh situation in different university have been in that last week. What to do in this case? Police, again, the police officers has to be in the middle between democratic government, who's like a George Soros Foundation give the money for that all situation on the street to support this activist, and the other side, the old police officers had to be keep the our neighborhoods in the safety.
So look, what happened in Israel was horrible. Israel has a right to defend itself, and I understand that people are very upset, because there's going to be a lot of suffering. War is hell. This is going to be horrible. There are people dying, and it's always a horrible thing. But what's happening in campuses is really targeted against other innocent people. These are Jewish students sitting in their cafeteria, sitting in their kosher cafeteria. These are kids that are studying, and they're being surrounded in a library because they're Jewish. You know what? They didn't do anything. They didn't do anything to these, to the pro-Palestinian people. Who even knows how involved they are. So it's always, I always say, you got to shut down hateful rhetoric, because hateful rhetoric leads to hate speech, and hate speech leads to hate crimes. And we see these, it's okay to say we want something positive to happen, but it's certainly not okay to say we hate these people, and these Jews. We have individuals saying that Jews need to be exterminated, and we have swastikas on campus. We have all of this anti-Semitism, not just on campus, but all over. And that can't be tolerated. Okay. The hate cannot be tolerated no matter who it's directed at. But, when you see these kids who are not doing anything wrong, be surrounded by a pro-Palestinian mob, this is when the police have to step in and make sure that violence is addressed accordingly. Did that answer your question? I'm sorry.
You did your best to answer that, because I understand. Yeah. Listen, I understand this is a tough topic for everyone, and so there is so many people live on the both side. In the United States, there is like a multicultural, and supporting one nation, you automatically like not supporting another one, and that's why it's so much hate on the street in this world. I mean, I think that Donald Trump, he told, if I were president and I were keeping president, there is no war and there is no situation like this in Israel. There is no war in Ukraine. That only happened because Democratic lunatic comes to the White House, mention Joe Biden, of course. And my opinion, I strongly believe if there is no like a majority of the Democratic and lefties, there is no war in the world.
Yeah, I mean, let's bring it back to the local level. What you said is 100% true, and I can make, an analogy. When you have when the previous president, any president, sets the tone that countries that misbehave will be dealt with severely. You know what they say? We're going to wait it out. We're not going to misbehave. When you say to our citizens, if you misbehave, if you engage in violent conduct, you engage in crime, you're going to be dealt with severely. It's going to stop that violent crime and the misbehavior on the local level and the personal level. So I make that analogy because it works, right? Human beings, you need a carrot and a stick to really affect and impact human behavior. And that's what Trump did. Trump gave positive reinforcement and also the threat of punishment if people misbehaved, and he struck the right balance. Hopefully we have hopefully that come next year we flip the House, we flip the Senate, we hold the House, and we flip the presidency, right? Because we need to change we need a change in this country. And on the local level, you say Biden on the local level, let's look at the migrant crisis. We didn't talk about that. We have these millions of people came into this country, and he gaslights the entire country. No, the borders are not open. Millions of people are coming through. Millions of people are here. These people, they say, they know what to say. They say, I'm seeking asylum. I'm seeking asylum. Yet they don't really qualify for asylum. These people will not get before a judge. They're given a piece of paper. They're not even being vetted. They're given a piece of paper, come back in 5 years. By then, they go to a sanctuary city like New York or Chicago, San Francisco, that if they don't come back, no one's going to look for them. No one's going to look for them. So they're basically in this country forever, and we don't know who they are. We don't know what their intentions are, and we're paying billions and billions of dollars. New York City is going to have a budget gap of $12 billion next year, due in large part to the migrant crisis and our crazy idea that we have to house and feed and take care of anybody who comes here from any place in the world, which is insane.
And all of the people, because even like their migration situation, but they just thinking there is no point go and vote. And you mentioned there is no people in New York State who is lost trust in election and confidence in the election.
Well, look, again, this is in part 2020, that election. I don't think it was technically stolen, but they kind of like rigged the game. So it was legally stolen, which is even worse. They send out all of these absentee ballots to anybody in the world. There was no control about who could return them. It was just horribly, horribly managed, and that's what that's what I think caused a lack of confidence in the system. And we look at Georgia. Remember all the nonsense when Georgia tightened up all these regulations, right, and made it so that there was these ballots were secure, and they left the processing plant, they went to the person, they were tracked, the signatures were verified. So all of the stuff that they yelled and screamed about, the Democrats yelled and screamed about how this was disenfranchising people. Well, guess what? What happened in Georgia when they instituted just common sense voter integrity laws? What happened? Look, participation increased. More people than ever voted. And what happened in the actual races? So we had Senate races, a Democrat won. We had the governor race, a Republican run. So no one is gaming the system, right? If the Republicans had really rigged it the way that Democrats said that they did, well then the two Democrat candidates would have lost, but they didn't. They didn't lose. So we can have integrity in our voting system that's fair for everybody, and that's something that we should definitely look at. Some of the games that the Democrats play, you'll see buses of senior citizens get off, come to a polling site, and all of the senior citizens will be taken to the polls. They're coming from senior centers, and they're given $5 gift cards if they come and they vote. That's not illegal. That's not illegal. You know, they're helping the person vote. They gave them money to not to vote. They gave them money for lunch. So yeah, we get it. But it's what are they saying on the bus? That's maybe not appropriate. They're telling these, and I've heard it a bunch of times, the nonprofits are telling the people who are getting these services, they're saying, if you vote Republican, they're going to take all this away from you. They're going to take all of this away from you. And they put it in their head, and they whisper in their ear who they want these individuals to vote for. And that's the game that they play. We've seen it. There's nothing really we can do because we're outnumbered. We don't have the infrastructure that they do to bring people from different senior centers. I don't know. We're gonna have conservative senior centers and Republican senior centers and Democrat senior centers. I don't know if that's gonna happen. But this is some of the games that they stay in power. The Democrats do all this for years and years and years. I will say, you asked me about early voting. Early voting is safe. Early voting is safe. It is the same people running it. I'm in those polling places, and it's the same people running it and they run it the same way as election day. It's very, very easy. There's no lines. You go in. It's such a well-run operation. I want to do a shout out. I want to thank the Board of Elections and all of the poll workers and the people who oversee them. You know, it's costing a lot of money, and we're underutilized because not a lot of people are voting early. Not a lot of people are voting on election day, and that's what's got to change. We need to have, especially in the city council race, and this year, it's more important than ever to actually say, okay, this guy Vito, yeah, I'm going to go to work. I'm going to go to the poll, and I'm going to vote for Vito. You're not going to wander into the poll site because you want to vote for president or governor or mayor, and then you go down the list and just vote along a party line. You have to know who's running. That's Vito LaBella for city council, District 43. And you have to go with the intention of supporting a specific candidate. So listen, if you are in District 43, if you're in District 47, if you're in District 38, you got to vote the Republican, conservative, right down the line. In my case, the third column, the conservative column. You got to vote for that because that's how we're going to impact change. That's how we're going to make change. We're going to send a message that we have a block in South Brooklyn that's not going to tolerate this Democrat socialist garbage. And that's the word I want to get out there, and especially in the Russian community. If you're in the Russian community, I'm going to have your back the same way I have everyone's back, but you're going to be treated equally. I'm going to treat every single community equally. What are their specific needs? I'm going to reach out to every community in their home language. I want to make sure that they really feel like they're part of the broader community, that everyone's needs, everyone's opinion matters. And I think I've done that when I was PTA president. I did it as a cop, as a lieutenant, making sure that we dealt with everybody from all over the world fairly and equally. So I'm the best candidate for District 43. And that's just all there is to it.
That goes without saying. So, but the last question is, tell us what you have to pay attention for the candidate who is running for some position, because there's some people, just maybe too lazy to go and surf in what the candidate is. So many candidates, especially on the local levels, the people don't even know about. They come to say, vote for me, I'm a good candidate for you, and maybe give the gift cards. So, as you mentioned, this is not a crime, but I think it's a little bribe anyway, but maybe not a little, because it's important things. If you go and vote for the candidates, what is your criteria?
So look, we understand that most people don't have the time. You have wonky people like us that this is super important, and we dive into the backgrounds of every single candidate. And I understand. Look, I understand that ordinary people, they're living their lives, they're raising their families, they're working 1-2 jobs, they're trying to get through the day, and I understand they don't have the luxury to go and vet every single candidate. And that's how, honestly, that's how you get a candidate like I think what happened in Long Island. But just look at the background, look at what they say, don't be impressed by platitudes. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. Okay, really? Well, what have you done before? You got to verify kind of in your own mind what they've done, and is it true? What they're saying true? That's the biggest thing. One of the candidates that's running along, she's lying about everything she does. She says she's a community activist. She says that she was fighting for gifted and talented. She wasn't fighting for anything. I was fighting from the beginning. My friends and I were together. We never saw her. We never saw anything about her prior to this year. And she's saying, make these outrageous claims that she's this, she's that, and she hasn't done anything. You got to really call out when people lie and when people misrepresent themselves. And I always say, listen, I got into trouble last year because I don't believe in scrubbing social media. It is what it is. It's out there. If I have a different position in 2020 or 2018, from what I have today, well, it's because I got new information.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the bottom line. I mean, we shouldn't be the same people we are for our entire lives. We should constantly adapt, get new information, reconsider. Okay, what I thought about the COVID-19 vaccine in 2020 is totally different than what I think about it in 2023. Not because I'm pandering to the crowd, because I don't do that, because I don't care that much. I'm not going to lie. There's no job that I'm going to get that I'm going to misrepresent myself or lie to people. What I tell people is, if I've changed a position, it's because I know that I was maybe incorrect, or I didn't have enough information, or maybe the government lied to us. That's why you should change a position. You shouldn't be afraid to change a position because you're going to be called out as a flip-flopper. No, you change position when it's warranted to change a position. But that's what you got to look for. You got to look for people that are not pandering, not saying just whatever they have to say to get elected. And that's where, unfortunately, that's the narrative out there. If you're a candidate running in a primary, you have to do a certain thing to get the primary vote. And then you're supposed to shift to the middle to get the general. I never did any of that. What I said is, these are my positions. This is what I believe. This is why I believe it. And this is why you should vote for me. And, unfortunately, what happens sometimes is, because the nature of primaries is that the extremes on both sides come out. And, it didn't work for me in the primary for the Republicans, but I'm here for the conservative. And this year, it doesn't matter what line you're on, because there's three names, and people who know me personally, who know my work for the last 6 years and the 32 years before that, they know that I'm the best candidate of the three. It doesn't matter what line we're on, because it's irrelevant.
Thank you, Vito, for everything you share with us, the all information, and I truly wish you to be a winner in this election run. So thank you so much for being with us, and I recommend you as a good candidate, because you really prove that what you're talking about. They really prove for the serving the police. You really prove the running twice and won twice already in a political stage. And I think everything is going to be great in District 43 with you, like a real man who wants to change the neighborhood, who wants to help all the community who live there, because first of all, we're all Americans, as we mentioned before, and the second of all, we are Asian, Russian, Jewish, and we all live in the United States. And yes, America first. Anyway, America first.
Yeah. Thank you so much, my friend. Just one shout out, my new website, Vito LaBella, fightingfornewyork.com. It links to my podcast, audio and visual podcast. I'll try to do as good a job as you do with the stuff that you produce. So that's a very high bar you set, but that's what I'm going to try to do. Thank you very much.
Let's keep together. Thank you so much.
Voting is now open. Please vote for me, Vito LaBella, at the bottom of the ballot in the third column. Throughout my entire adult life, I have been steadfastly dedicated to fighting for New York. I served the city for 32 years as an NYPD lieutenant, keeping the subways safe. I was twice elected to the Community Education Council and stood up to the Department of Education in defense of decency when they wanted to push age-inappropriate material on our children, and
when they wanted to discriminate against Asian families by limiting the number of Asian children who go to the best high schools in New York City. I have a documented record of years of volunteer work in community and education advocacy. I have 10 years of social media and YouTube history that have never been scrubbed or deleted. For integrity, transparency, and accountability, please vote for Vito LaBella as your City Council representative in District 43. I promise to address the concerns of every community in District 43. I did that as a police lieutenant and as a PTA president, and I will do that as your city councilman. Even if you don't usually vote, now is not the time to stay home. Please vote, and vote for Vito LaBella at the bottom of the ballot in the third column. My name is Vito LaBella, and I approve this message. Please look for Vito LaBella Fighting for New York, my audio and video podcast, now available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and Google. Paid for by Vito LaBella for New York City. Thank you.